The case we're diving into tonight is one of the most haunting, unsolved crimes in Texas history, the Yoghurt Shop Murders. It's December 6th, 1991, in Austin, Texas. Four teenage girls, Amy Ayers, just 13 years old, Jennifer Harbison, 17, her sister Sarah Harbison, 15, and Eliza Thomas, also 17, are brutally murdered inside an I can't believe it's yogurt shop on West Anderson Lane. This is a crime that shattered a city and has left scars for over 3 decades.
That's a date and a place that's burned into Austin's memory. Can you set the scene for us? What was Austin like back then? And what brought those four girls together at the shop that night?
Austin in 1991 was just beginning to bloom, but it still had a small-town feel. The yogurt shop was a popular hangout, especially for teens. On that Friday night, Eliza and Jennifer were working the closing shift. Sarah, Jennifer's younger sister, and her friend Amy Ayers, who was 13, were there to get a ride home after closing. The shop was closing at 11 p.m., and the girls were tidying up, ready to leave for the night, totally unaware of the horror about to unfold.
Were there any signs that something was wrong before the shop closed? Did anyone notice suspicious activity or people in the area?
There were, actually. About an hour before closing, a man tried to hustle customers in line and was allowed to use the bathroom in the back. He took a long time, raising suspicions. Around closing, a couple leaving the shop saw two men acting furtively at a table. Jennifer locked the front door at 11 p.m. to prevent more customers from coming in, but the rear door may have been jammed open earlier. These are little details that investigators would agonize over for years.
That sounds incredibly unsettling. So after the shop closed, what happened next? How did authorities first become aware that something was terribly wrong?
Just before midnight, a patrolman with the Austin Police Department saw smoke and reported a fire at the yogurt shop. Firefighters arrived quickly, forced their way inside, and discovered a horrific scene. The shop was ablaze, water from the hoses mixing with smoke, making the air thick and suffocating. After extinguishing the fire, they found the bodies of the four girls, nude, bound, and gagged, each shot in the head. The brutality stunned even seasoned investigators.
That's horrifying. Were the girls all together when they were found, or were there differences in how the bodies were discovered?
Most were found together, but one detail that has always haunted investigators is Amy Ayers. She was found in a different part of the shop, less charred than the others. Amy had a sock-like cloth around her neck, burns on up to 30% of her body, and 2 gunshot wounds. One had missed her brain, the other caused severe damage, exiting through her cheek and jawline. The other 3, Jennifer, Sarah, and Eliza, were bound with their own underwear, gagged, and shot execution style.
That level of violence and precision, it's chilling. What did the crime scene tell investigators? Did they have any theories early on?
The crime scene was chaotic, but certain things stood out. The use of 2 different guns, a .22 and a .380 pistol, suggested at least 2 perpetrators. The way the victims were controlled, the systematic approach, and the deliberate destruction of evidence by arson all pointed to someone organized, possibly experienced in crime. At first, detectives thought this was far too sophisticated for teenagers.
With the fire damaging so much, were investigators able to recover any physical evidence? Did they find any clues that could help identify the killers?
The fire complicated everything. Water from the hoses, melted plastics, and smoke destroyed or tainted most evidence. Still, investigators managed to collect some crucial items: bullet casings, bits of rope, and DNA samples from the victims. There were no fingerprints conclusively linked to suspects, and no security cameras in the shop. One key piece, DNA from an unknown male, was recovered, but at the time, DNA technology was still in its infancy.
That must have been incredibly frustrating for the families and investigators. Did they have any suspects early on, or was the case immediately cold?
In the first days, the city was gripped by fear. With few concrete leads, police interviewed hundreds of people, friends, family, anyone who'd been near the shop that night. The 2 men seen by the couple shortly before closing became persons of interest, but their identities were never confirmed. No one could explain the motive. Was it a robbery gone wrong, a targeted attack, or something even darker?
You mentioned the victims' backgrounds earlier. Can you tell us more about them? Their families, their relationships, their lives before that night?
Absolutely. Jennifer and Sarah Harbison were sisters, close-knit, both talented students. Jennifer was responsible, a natural leader, while Sarah was more reserved. Eliza Thomas, Jennifer's coworker, was outgoing and bright, known for her infectious laugh. Amy Ayers, the youngest, was a horse-loving, kind-hearted eighth grader. Their families have described how their absence has left an unfillable void. Eliza's sister, Sonora, remembers her teeth chattering uncontrollably when she heard the news, while their mother locked herself in her room, refusing to speak with police.
That's heartbreaking. Did the families have any sense of danger, or did this crime come completely out of nowhere for them?
For the families, there was no warning. Austin felt safe, especially the north side where the yogurt shop was located. The girls were simply at work or waiting for a ride, living ordinary lives. The randomness and senselessness of the crime made it even more terrifying. It shattered the sense of security for everyone, not just those families.
After the initial shock, how did the community respond? Was there a major outpouring of support, or were people just scared?
The city of Austin was devastated. Candlelight vigils were held, with thousands turning out to mourn the girls. Memorials grew outside the yogurt shop, and donations poured in for the families. But there was also palpable fear. Parents kept their children close, and teens stopped hanging out at night. The memory of what happened became part of Austin's identity, a wound that still hasn't fully healed.
What about the investigation itself? How did the Austin Police Department handle the early days, and what challenges did they face?
The investigation was massive. Detectives worked around the clock, setting up a command post, combing through leads, and canvassing the area for witnesses. But with so much evidence destroyed and no surveillance footage, progress was slow. Police faced criticism for not securing the scene quickly enough and for releasing little information, fueling rumors and frustration in the community.
Were there any notable witnesses beyond the couple who saw the two men? Did anyone else see or hear anything unusual that night?
Several witnesses reported seeing unfamiliar men near the shop that evening. Some described a man with scruffy hair loitering outside, while others mentioned a group of teens nearby, but none of these tips led to a breakthrough. One witness described hearing a loud bang around closing, but thought it was just fireworks, details that would haunt them later.
Were there any signs that something was wrong before the shop closed? Did anyone notice suspicious activity or people in the area?
There were, actually. About an hour before closing, a man tried to hustle customers in line and was allowed to use the bathroom in the back. He took a long time, raising suspicions. Around closing, a couple leaving the shop saw two men acting furtively at a table. Jennifer locked the front door at 11 p.m. to prevent more customers from coming in, but the rear door may have been jammed open earlier. These are little details that investigators would agonize over for years.
That sounds incredibly unsettling. So after the shop closed, what happened next? How did authorities first become aware that something was terribly wrong?
Just before midnight, a patrolman with the Austin Police Department saw smoke and reported a fire at the yogurt shop. Firefighters arrived quickly, forced their way inside, and discovered a horrific scene. The shop was ablaze, water from the hoses mixing with smoke, making the air thick and suffocating. After extinguishing the fire, they found the bodies of the four girls, nude, bound, and gagged, each shot in the head. The brutality stunned even seasoned investigators.
That's horrifying. Were the girls all together when they were found, or were there differences in how the bodies were discovered?
Most were found together, but one detail that has always haunted investigators is Amy Ayers. She was found in a different part of the shop, less charred than the others. Amy had a sock-like cloth around her neck, burns on up to 30% of her body, and 2 gunshot wounds. One had missed her brain, the other caused severe damage, exiting through her cheek and jawline. The other 3, Jennifer, Sarah, and Eliza, were bound with their own underwear, gagged, and shot execution style.
That level of violence and precision, it's chilling. What did the crime scene tell investigators about the killers? Did they have any theories early on?
The crime scene was chaotic, but certain things stood out. The use of 2 different guns, a .22 and a .380 pistol, suggested at least 2 perpetrators. The way the victims were controlled, the systematic approach, and the deliberate destruction of evidence by arson all pointed to someone organized, possibly experienced in crime. At first, detectives thought this was far too sophisticated for teenagers.
With the fire damaging so much, were investigators able to recover any physical evidence? Did they find any clues that could help identify the killers?
The fire complicated everything. Water from the hoses, melted plastics, and smoke destroyed or tainted most evidence. Still, investigators managed to collect some crucial items: bullet casings, bits of rope, and DNA samples from the victims. There were no fingerprints conclusively linked to suspects, and no security cameras in the shop. One key piece, DNA from an unknown male, was recovered, but at the time, DNA technology was still in its infancy.
That must have been incredibly frustrating for the families and investigators. Did they have any suspects early on, or was the case immediately cold?
In the first days, the city was gripped by fear. With few concrete leads, police interviewed hundreds of people, friends, family, anyone who'd been near the shop that night. The two men, seen by the couple shortly before closing, became persons of interest, but their identities were never confirmed. No one could explain the motive. Was it a robbery gone wrong? A targeted? At least one victim, Amy Ayers, showed signs of sexual assault. Investigators collected swabs and biological evidence from all four, but DNA technology in 1991 was limited. Initial analysis was inconclusive, and the fire had destroyed or contaminated much of the evidence. Still, a partial DNA profile from an unknown male was later extracted.
What did investigators learn from the way the girls were bound and gagged? Did this suggest anything about the perpetrators?
The bindings, torn strips of the girls' own clothing, were precise and deliberate, suggesting control and forethought. The girls were forced to kneel, hands tied behind their backs. This, coupled with the use of two weapons and the methodical execution, led detectives to believe the killers were adults, possibly with criminal experience.
Were there any eyewitnesses who saw suspicious activity outside the shop late that night? Any vehicles or people noticed?
Several witnesses reported seeing two men loitering outside the shop around closing time. One described a white or light-colored sedan parked nearby. Another neighbor recalled hearing raised voices and a car speeding away just after midnight. Unfortunately, none of these descriptions led to solid suspects.
What about the timeline after the fire? How did families learn about the tragedy, and what was the immediate impact?
Police officers arrived at the Harbison, Thomas, and Ayers homes in the early hours, delivering the news in person. Sonora Thomas, Eliza's sister, remembered her mother collapsing in grief, locking herself in her bedroom. Families were numb with shock. The city of Austin awoke to headlines of horror and loss, forever changed by the brutality of that night.
Did the community respond right away? Were there vigils, media coverage, or efforts to help the families?
Austin rallied quickly. News crews flooded the scene, and hundreds gathered for candlelight vigils outside the Yoghurt Shop and at Lanier High. Fundraisers were organized for funeral expenses. The tragedy became a citywide obsession. People shared theories, attended memorials, and grappled with fear that the killers could be anyone, anywhere.
Were there any early suspects or persons of interest identified in those first days? How did investigators proceed?
Detectives initially questioned several local men with criminal records, as well as known troublemakers who frequented the strip mall. They canvassed the area, interviewed employees from neighboring shops, and reviewed credit card transactions. But with no surveillance footage and little physical evidence, leads quickly dried up.
How did the girls' families describe their lives in the days before the murders? Any unusual behavior or concerns?
Each family described a sense of normalcy. No threats, no strange encounters, no warnings. Amy was excited for an upcoming horse show. Eliza had just aced a math test. Jennifer was planning a weekend trip. Sarah was focused on basketball. There were no signs that any of them felt unsafe or were being followed.
Did any friends, classmates, or teachers report unusual conversations or confessions after the murders?
In the weeks following, classmates reported nothing out of the ordinary. Teachers described the girls as engaged and optimistic. One friend of Jennifer's recalled an offhand comment about customers lingering after hours, but nothing alarming. Rumors swirled, but none led to solid leads.
What about the psychological toll on the victims' families and friends? How did they cope in the immediate aftermath?
The trauma was profound. Sonora Thomas, Eliza's sister, described sleepless nights, her teeth chattering uncontrollably. The Harbison and Ayers families withdrew, struggling with grief and media attention. Counselors were brought into schools, but the sense of loss was overwhelming. Many parents kept their children home, terrified the killers might strike again.
Did the investigators consult any psychological profilers or experts early on? What did those profiles suggest?
Yes, behavioral analysts from the FBI were brought in. They theorized the killers were likely males in their early 20s, familiar with the area, and possibly motivated by robbery or sexual violence. The organized method, planning, control, arson, suggested experience rather than impulse.
Did police believe the crime was random, or did they think the victims were specifically targeted?
Early theories leaned toward a robbery gone wrong. The cash register was emptied, but only a small amount was missing. Detectives considered whether the girls had been targeted, but found no evidence of stalking or prior threats. The prevailing view was that the shop, not the girls, was the main target, until the killers encountered 4 witnesses.
Were there any indications the girls tried to fight back or escape? Any defensive wounds or signs of struggle?
Forensic analysis revealed minimal defensive wounds, possibly due to fear, restraint, or overwhelming force. Amy Ayers showed slight bruising on her wrists. Eliza had a cut on her palm. The bindings and gags likely prevented resistance, and the use of firearms ensured compliance. The speed of execution left little chance to escape.
Did the fire set at the scene destroy any crucial evidence? What did investigators lose as a result?
The arson was devastating. Fire and water obliterated fingerprints, footprints, and potential DNA. Investigators believe the killers used accelerant on the bodies to erase evidence. Burned fibers and melted plastic made it nearly impossible to reconstruct the exact sequence of events. Only a few partial prints were salvageable, none matched to suspects.
Were there any items missing from the victims, or evidence of theft beyond the cash register?
Beyond the cash register, there was no sign of valuables taken. The girls' purses and personal items remained untouched. Jewelry was found on some victims. This led some detectives to believe that robbery might not have been the sole motive, raising the chilling possibility the killers came for something else.
Were there any unique forensic findings, footprints, fibers, or anything else that stood out to investigators?
Forensics recovered a partial shoe print near the back exit, possibly from a men's size 10 sneaker, but it was too smudged for identification. Hair fibers not belonging to the victims were found, but without modern DNA analysis, they offered little at the time. A melted plastic lighter was also recovered, suggesting careful planning by the arsonist.
Did investigators ever find out how the killers entered or exited the shop? Any signs of forced entry?
There was no sign of forced entry at the front. Investigators believe the killers exited through the back, which was found unlocked. It's possible the man who used the bathroom earlier jammed the rear door open, creating an escape route. This detail became a key focus for detectives, but the suspect was never identified.
How did the timeline of events narrow down for investigators? What was the estimated window when the murders took place?
Based on witness statements and autopsy findings, police estimated the murders occurred between 11:15 and 11:50 p.m. The girls likely finished closing duties before being confronted. The fire was set just before midnight, minutes before Officer Gay saw the smoke. This tight window narrowed the suspect pool, but still led detectives with dozens of possibilities.
Were there any employees or former employees of the yogurt shop become suspects or provide key information?
All current and former employees were interviewed extensively. None had a criminal record or clear motive. Some reported seeing unfamiliar men hanging around the shop in the weeks prior, but descriptions were vague. One ex-employee recalled a customer who'd been aggressive about closing time, but he had an alibi.
Were there any theories involving other businesses in the strip mall or suspicious activity in the area?
Detectives canvassed every business in the strip mall. Some owners reported break-ins and vandalism in the months leading up to December 1991. One liquor store clerk recalled a group of young men loitering late at night, matching the vague descriptions from the yogurt shop witnesses, but no solid evidence emerged.
What was the atmosphere in Austin like in the days and weeks after the murders? Any changes in community behavior or police presence?
Fear gripped the city. Parents refused to let their children out after dark. The yogurt shop closed permanently, its windows boarded up, candles and flowers lining the sidewalk. Police increased patrols, and community meetings were held weekly. The case dominated headlines, with rumors and theories on every radio show and newspaper.
What about the procedural issues or challenges early on? Any mistakes or missed opportunities?
The coherent, water-soaked crime scene posed major challenges. Evidence was compromised by fire and firefighting efforts. Police were criticized for not immediately securing the area, possibly allowing cross-contamination. Some witnesses weren't interviewed until days later, and valuable time was lost in the crucial first 48 hours.
Were there any psychological or behavioral patterns in the way the victims were killed that helped profilers narrow down the suspects?
The execution-style shootings, binding, and arson indicated a need for control and a desire to eliminate witnesses. Profilers noted the killers likely had experience or knowledge of criminal procedure. The use of two weapons suggested at least two perpetrators, both methodical and unafraid to escalate violence.
Did any of the victims' personal histories or relationships suggest possible motives or enemies?
Investigators combed through the girls' backgrounds, but found nothing indicating risk. No troubled relationships, no enemies, no recent disputes. Teachers, friends, and family all described the victims as well-liked and drama-free. The absence of motive deepened the mystery and frustration for detectives.
Did the families ever receive threats or strange calls after the murders? Any follow-up harassment or contact?
In the weeks after, the Harbisons received 2 anonymous phone calls, just heavy breathing, then a hang-up. Police traced the numbers but found nothing conclusive. Other families reported no harassment. Investigators considered whether the calls were pranks or attempts to intimidate, but the trail went cold.
Were there any composite sketches created based on witness descriptions? Did those lead anywhere?
2 composite sketches were circulated based on witnesses' accounts of the men seen near closing time. Both depicted white males in their early 20s, one with dark hair, the other with a scruffy beard. Tips poured in, but none panned out. The sketches remain part of the case file, symbols of hope and frustration.
How did the police and media handle the release of information to the public? Any controversies or issues?
Officer Gay is first to the scene. He approaches the front window, sees thick, black smoke, and realizes the situation is dire. Firefighters from Station 16 arrive quickly. They force open the front door and are hit by a wall of heat and smoke. Using hoses and thermal cameras, they push inside, focusing on the back of the store where the fire seems most intense. The smell of burning plastic and chemicals is overwhelming. They notice the cash register drawer is open, bills missing, an early sign something is wrong beyond the flames.
When do they realize it's not just a fire, but a crime scene with victims inside? How do they make that discovery?
As the smoke clears, firefighter David Dungan moves toward the rear storage room. There, amidst charred debris, he makes the grim discovery: 4 bodies, tangled together, nude, and badly burned. Their positions suggest they were bound together, and it's immediately clear this is not an accident. Dungan radios for police backup. This is now a homicide scene. The time is about 12:15 a.m. The shop's interior is still smoldering, water pooling on the linoleum, steam rising from the wreckage.
Who were the first officers and detectives to enter the scene after the firefighters? What was their initial reaction to what they found?
Detectives John Jones and Mike Huckabee are among the first homicide investigators on site. They arrive just after the fire is extinguished and are struck by the brutality. 4 teenage girls, Amy Ayers, 13, Eliza Thomas, 17, Jennifer Harbison, 17, and Sarah Harbison, 15, are identified at the scene. The girls are found bound with their own clothing, shot execution style. Amy Ayers, the youngest, is located a short distance from the others, as if she'd tried to escape. The officers immediately seal off the area, calling in CSU, Crime Scene Unit. Their shock is palpable. One detective later recalls, "I'd never seen anything like it."
When did the investigators begin processing the scene? With all the water and damage from the fire, what steps did they take to preserve evidence?
The scene is chaotic: water, soot, and melted plastic everywhere. Investigators meticulously photograph everything before moving any bodies. They start with a grid search, mapping blood spatters, bullet casings, and the trajectory of gunfire. The fire, set intentionally, destroyed a lot of physical evidence, but they recover bullets, .22 caliber and .380 caliber, from the victims. They also collect burned clothing, ropes, and swab possible areas for biological evidence, hoping some DNA survived the intense heat. Every inch is combed for hair, fibers, and fingerprints, but the water complicates everything. They also bagged the cash register drawer, noting the missing money.
Were there any immediate witnesses or people nearby who saw or heard anything suspicious before or during the fire?
Yes, two key witness accounts emerge early. A couple leaving the yogurt shop just before closing, around 11 p.m., recall seeing two men sitting at a table acting furtively, almost as if they were waiting for something. They describe one as having dark hair, possibly Hispanic, wearing a green army jacket. Another witness, a man who tried to hustle customers inside the shop earlier, was permitted to use the bathroom in the back. He stayed unusually long and may have jammed a rear door open. These details become crucial in the early investigation, as they suggest the perpetrators may have lingered in the shop after closing.
What about the families? How and when did they learn about what had happened to their daughters?
Notification is handled with extreme care, but the news spreads quickly through the tight-knit Austin community. Sonora Thomas, Eliza's sister, recalls her teeth chattering uncontrollably when police knock on the family's door in the early hours. The Harbisons are similarly devastated. Jennifer and Sarah's parents are informed by officers just after dawn. The shock is profound. Sonora later says, "I had never woken up on a day when my sister wasn't alive." The families are interviewed immediately, providing background on the girls' routines, friendships, and anyone who might have had a grudge.
What did the initial forensic examination reveal about the cause of death and the order of events inside the shop?
The autopsies, conducted by Travis County Medical Examiner Dr. Roberto Bayardo, confirm all four girls died of gunshot wounds to the head. 3, Sarah, Eliza, and Jennifer, are found bound together. Each is shot with a .22 in the back of the head. Amy Ayers, found nearby, is shot twice. One bullet missed her brain, the second exited through her jaw. She also suffered burns, but the gunshot wounds were fatal. The medical examiner estimates the murders occurred shortly after closing, between 11:15 p.m. and midnight. There's evidence at least one girl was sexually assaulted.
That's horrifying. Were there any signs of struggle, or did the killer seem to have complete control over the victims?
The bindings, fashioned from the girls' own underwear, suggest the perpetrators exerted total control. There are no defensive wounds on most victims, indicating they were subdued quickly, likely at gunpoint. The only exception is Amy, whose position and wounds suggest she may have tried to flee or resist. The methodical way the girls were bound, gagged, and executed points to an organized offender, or offenders, experienced in controlling victims. The fire was set later, likely to destroy evidence.
Let's talk about the shop itself. What did investigators find about the layout, the doors, and possible points of entry or exit?
The shop is small, about 1,200 square feet, with a front entrance facing the strip mall parking lot and a rear door leading to a service alley. Investigators find the rear door unlocked, raising suspicions someone exited that way. The bathroom in the back, where the suspicious man lingered, is just steps from that door. The theory is that the killers jammed the door open to facilitate escape. The cash register area shows signs of a quick robbery, but the real focus is the back room, where the girls are found. The intense fire damage is concentrated in this area, suggesting the arson was deliberate, meant to burn the bodies and erase traces.
When do they realize it's not just a robbery, but something far more sinister?
Detective Huckabee later says this was never a simple robbery. The brutality, the sexual assault, the arson, all pointed to a calculated, sadistic crime. The missing cash, though noted, was minimal, only about $540. The girls' clothing, the bindings, and the execution-style shootings suggest the motive was control and violence, not money. From the first hours, police treated it as a major homicide, calling in extra detectives and consulting profilers. They immediately suspect more than one perpetrator due to the number of victims and the level of control displayed.
Did they find any fingerprints, DNA, or physical evidence that could point to the killers?
This is the most frustrating aspect. The fire, smoke, and water destroy most trace evidence. However, they do recover partial fingerprints from a bathroom door and from a cup near the register. Swabs are taken from the victims. Later, DNA from an unknown male is found on one of the girls, indicating sexual assault. The bullets removed from the victims are carefully cataloged, .22 and .380 caliber, suggesting 2 firearms. Burned clothing is sent to the lab, fibers are collected, and hairs are bagged, but most are too damaged for analysis. Police hope forensic advances will one day help.
Were there any immediate witnesses or people nearby who saw or heard anything suspicious before or during the fire?
Yes, two key witness accounts emerge early. A couple leaving the yogurt shop just before closing, around 11 p.m., recall seeing two men sitting at a table acting furtively, almost as if they were waiting for something. They describe one as having dark hair, possibly Hispanic, wearing a green army jacket. Another witness, a man who tried to hustle customers inside the shop earlier, was permitted to use the bathroom in the back. He stayed unusually long and may have jammed a rear door open. These details become crucial in the early investigation as they suggest the perpetrators may have lingered in the shop after closing.
What about the families? How and when did they learn about what had happened to their daughters?
Notification is handled with extreme care, but the news spreads quickly through the tight-knit Austin community. Sonora Thomas, Eliza's sister, recalls her teeth chattering uncontrollably when police knock on the family's door in the early hours. The Harbisons are similarly devastated. Jennifer and Sarah's parents are informed by officers just after dawn. The shock is profound. Sonora later says, "I had never woken up on a day when my sister wasn't alive." The families are interviewed immediately, providing background on the girls' routines, friendships, and anyone who might have had a grudge.
What did the initial forensic examination reveal about the cause of death and the order of events inside the shop?
The autopsies, conducted by Travis County Medical Examiner Dr. Roberto Bayardo, confirm all four girls died of gunshot wounds to the head. 3, Sarah, Eliza, and Jennifer, are found bound together. Each is shot with a .22 in the back of the head. Amy Ayers, found nearby, is shot twice. One bullet missed her brain, the second exited through her jaw. She also suffered burns, but the gunshot wounds were fatal. The medical examiner estimates the murders occurred shortly after closing, between 11:15 p.m. and midnight. There's evidence at least one girl was sexually assaulted.
That's horrifying. Were there any signs of struggle, or did the killer seem to have complete control over the victims?
The bindings, fashioned from the girls' own underwear, suggest the perpetrators exerted total control. There are no defensive wounds on most victims, indicating they were subdued quickly, likely at gunpoint. The only exception is Amy, whose position and wounds suggest she may have tried to flee or resist. The methodical way the girls were bound, gagged, and executed points to an organized offender, or offenders, experienced in controlling victims. The fire was set later, likely to destroy evidence.
Let's talk about the shop itself. What did investigators find about the layout, the doors, and possible points of entry or exit?
The shop is small, about 1,200 square feet, with a front entrance facing the strip mall parking lot and a rear door leading to a service alley. Investigators find the rear door unlocked, raising suspicions someone exited that way. The bathroom in the back, where the suspicious... The sketches spark a flurry of tips. One matches a suspect in a separate Austin kidnapping and sexual assault case. Police pursue this lead all the way to Mexico, where the suspects are arrested. Under intense interrogation by Mexican authorities, the men confess, but the details don't match the yogurt shop crime scene. The calibers are wrong, and key facts are inconsistent. Eventually, both men recant, casting doubt on their involvement.
How did the forensic team handle the victims' bodies and clothing? Did autopsies reveal anything about the timeline or sequence of events?
Autopsies are thorough and harrowing. All four girls, Eliza Thomas, Jennifer Harbison, Sarah Harbison, and Amy Ayers, are found gagged, hands tied with their own clothing, and each shot in the head. Forensic pathologists determine the order of deaths based on wound analysis and blood patterns. Amy Ayers, the youngest, is shot twice. The first wound is non-fatal, indicating she was alive and possibly aware after the initial injury.
That's heartbreaking. Did forensic psychologists weigh in on the behavior of the killers based on the crime scene?
Absolutely. The brutality and methodical nature suggest more than one perpetrator, likely two or more, given the control exercised over four victims. The use of fire as a cover-up, the sexual assault, and the varying levels of violence indicate a mix of organized and impulsive behaviors. Profilers describe the killers as possibly young, male, with local knowledge and criminal histories.
Were any fibers, hairs, or other trace evidence recovered that pointed to a suspect?
Forensic technicians gathered dozens of fiber and hair samples from the scene, especially from the victim's bindings and clothing. Some hairs don't match any of the girls, suggesting an unknown male presence. But in 1991, mitochondrial DNA analysis is still years away, so these samples are archived for future testing.
Did the investigators ever use forensic genealogy, like in the Golden State Killer case, to track down the DNA?
That approach comes much later. In the 2010s, as forensic genealogy becomes viable, detectives submit the unidentified DNA to public databases, searching for familial matches. Unfortunately, the DNA profile is partial and degraded, limiting the ability to find close relatives. Still, the case remains active, with new tests conducted as technology evolves.
What about the fire itself? Did arson investigators find any evidence about how it was started?
Arson experts examine the burn patterns and accelerant residues. They conclude the fire was set using readily available combustibles, lighter fluid, and paper products from the shop. The fire's origin point is near the victims' bodies, suggesting the killers intended to destroy physical evidence and possibly delay discovery.
Did they find any footprints, shoe impressions, or other physical traces near the fire's origin?
Some partial shoe prints are cast from the greasy, soot-covered floor near the back door. They appear to be from two different brands and sizes, supporting the theory of multiple assailants. Unfortunately, the prints are incomplete and lack distinctive tread patterns, making them difficult to trace to a specific individual or shoe model.
Were there any items missing from the shop or the victims that might suggest a motive beyond murder?
The cash register is emptied, but the amount taken is small, just under $50. The victim's personal items, including jewelry and wallets, are left behind. Investigators theorize that robbery may have been a secondary motive or merely a ruse to mislead police. The sexual assault and brutality point to a more personal or psychosexual motive.
How did investigators catalog and store all this evidence, especially with technology constantly evolving?
The Austin Police Department establishes a dedicated evidence locker for the Yoghurt Shop case. Every item, clothing, bullet fragments, DNA swabs, fiber samples, is meticulously labeled, sealed, and periodically re-examined as new technologies emerge.
In 2009, cold case detectives conduct a full inventory and retest all biological samples using next-generation DNA techniques.
Did any advanced tests like touch DNA or new fingerprint algorithms yield new leads in the 2000s?
Touch DNA analysis, which can detect minute skin cells left on surfaces, is performed on the victim's bindings and clothing. Some partial DNA profiles emerge, but none are a match in CODIS, the National DNA Database. Similarly, advanced fingerprint analysis using APHIS finds only partial, low-quality prints, still no definitive match.
Did any witness accounts change over time, or did new witnesses come forward as the investigation progressed?
Several witnesses revised their statements over the years. In 1999, a former customer comes forward, recalling two unfamiliar men seen arguing in the parking lot just before closing. Another witness, a delivery driver, remembers a suspicious vehicle idling nearby with its headlights off. These accounts are added to the growing case file and compared against suspect timelines.
How did the forensic team handle chain of custody, especially with evidence being retested over decades? Every movement of evidence is logged in detail: date, time, technician, and purpose. Each transfer is double-checked, and original samples are preserved wherever possible. This painstaking process is crucial to prevent contamination and to ensure that any future DNA match will be legally admissible in court.
Did the psychological profiles ever lead to a suspect or just help narrow down the type of person investigators were searching for?
Profilers help narrow the suspect pool. They suggest looking for young men with a history of violent offenses, possible sexual deviancy, and familiarity with the area. These profiles lead police to question dozens of local offenders, but the lack of clear physical evidence means no one is charged.
Did investigators ever suspect an inside job or someone with a connection to the girls or the shop?
Early on, police consider every possibility, including employees, family members, and frequent customers. Background checks and interviews rule out those closest to the victims. Attention turns to individuals with criminal records and unexplained movements on the night of December 6th. Were there any false leads or confessions that complicated the investigation?
Several. Over the years, at least 6 separate confessions are made, some under duress, others voluntarily. Many are quickly disproven when suspects can't provide details only the killer would know, or when DNA and ballistic evidence fail to match their stories. Each false confession drains resources and frustrates detectives.
Did the media coverage affect the investigation or the way evidence was handled?
Media attention is intense and constant, putting pressure on the police. Early leaks about the crime scene and suspects drive a flood of tips, many of which are dead ends. Investigators are careful not to reveal specifics about the evidence, hoping to weed out false confessions and protect the integrity of their findings.
How did investigators handle the emotional toll, given the age of the victims and the brutality?
Many detectives describe this as the most haunting case of their careers. Some, like Detective Jones, admit to sleepless nights and recurring nightmares. The victims' families form close bonds with some investigators, sharing grief and hope during each new forensic breakthrough or setback.
Did any outside experts or agencies assist with the forensic analysis?
Yes, the FBI, ATF, and Texas Department of Public Safety all provide technical expertise. Ballistics are sent to national labs, and DNA samples are periodically shipped to cutting-edge facilities for advanced testing. Private forensic consultants are even brought in during later years to review cold case files.
What was the most promising piece of evidence, and why did it ultimately not lead to an arrest?
The unidentified male DNA profile found on one victim's body is the most tantalizing clue. Despite exhaustive searches through state, national, and even international databases, it never matches an identified suspect. The partial, degraded nature of the sample limits the power of genealogical searches as well.
Did they ever find any evidence outside the yogurt shop, like in dumpsters or nearby areas, that connected to the crime?
Officers scour nearby dumpsters, drainage ditches, and alleyways for discarded weapons or clothing. Some burned paper and melted plastic are found in a dumpster a block away, but lab analysis reveals nothing conclusively tied to the crime. The killers were methodical, leaving few traces beyond the shop itself.
Were there any local rumors or urban legends about the evidence or suspects that complicated the case? Dozens of rumors swirl around Austin. Some implicate notorious local criminals, others suggest satanic cult activity, which was a common hysteria in the early 90s. Police investigate each lead, but none are substantiated by forensic evidence. The case becomes part of Austin's collective memory, fueling speculation for decades.
Did the families of the victims push for retesting or re-examination of evidence over the years?
The families are relentless advocates. They attend every hearing, press conference, and forensic update, often pushing police to retest samples as DNA technology improves. Their determination ensures the case never truly goes cold, even as years pass without resolution.
Has any evidence ever been lost or mishandled in the decades-long investigation?
Remarkably, the chain of custody remains unbroken for all major evidence. Some minor items, like melted packaging or generic fibers, are lost to fire or water damage on the night itself, but nothing crucial is misplaced by investigators.
Did forensic linguistics or psychological analysis of the confessions ever play a role?
Yes, forensic linguists analyze the false confessions for inconsistencies and unique knowledge only the killers would possess. They flag discrepancies in wording, timelines, and emotional responses, helping to rule out suspects who fail to demonstrate genuine, specific knowledge of the crime.
Did advances in digital forensics, has any old evidence been reanalyzed using new software or imaging tools?
In the 2010s, digital enhancement tools are used to re-examine photographs, fibers, and even partial fingerprints. Some previously unreadable prints are clarified, but none yield a match. Digital recreations of the crime scene are also produced to help visualize the sequence of events. Were there any patterns or similarities to other crimes in Austin or Texas that gave investigators leads? Investigators analyzed dozens of unsolved homicides and assaults for patterns, MO, weapon type, victimology, but the yogurt shop case is unique in its brutality and the calculated use of fire. No clear links to other crimes are ever established, despite exhaustive comparisons.
Did investigators ever consult with criminal profilers from the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit?
The BAU is consulted early on. Some locals note a string of robberies in North Austin involving young men, but police find no direct connection. FBI analysts briefly consider serial offender theories, comparing the case to similar crimes nationwide, but no clear pattern emerges. The unique combination of arson, sexual assault, and execution-style killings distinguishes the Yoghurt Shop murders from other incidents.
What was the impact of conflicting witness statements on the investigation's progress?
Conflicting statements stall the investigation. Each new detail triggers fresh leads, but rarely fits the overall puzzle. Some witnesses change their accounts over time, influenced by media coverage or community rumors. The lack of consensus forces detectives to revisit suspects, re-interview witnesses, and continually adjust their timeline. It's a painstaking, often frustrating process that leaves everyone searching for answers.
How did the families and community cope with the ongoing uncertainty and lack of resolution?
Families are consumed by grief and frustration. Sonora Thomas describes a living torture as the years pass without closure. Candlelight vigils and memorials become annual traditions, with the community rallying around the victims' families. Investigators, too, are haunted. John Jones admits the case is indelibly burned in his memory, a daily reminder of unfinished business.
Were there any moments when investigators believed they were close to solving the case based on witness testimony?
Several times, investigators think they've made a breakthrough. Pierce's handgun, Springsteen and Scott's confessions, the discovery of DNA. Each revelation sparks hope, but ultimately falls short. Witnesses offer tantalizing clues, descriptions, timelines, vehicles, but nothing ever ties together conclusively. The case remains maddeningly just out of reach.
Did the police ever publicly release composite sketches or suspect profiles based on witness descriptions?
Yes, composite sketches are circulated in local media based on Croft's and Kent's accounts. The images show two men, one tall and thin, one shorter with a green jacket, but no one steps forward to identify them. Rumors swirl, but the sketches fail to produce any actionable leads, adding to public frustration.
How did expert opinions shape investigators' strategies as the case dragged on?
Experts urge a return to basics, re-examining crime scene photos, re-interviewing witnesses, and retesting physical evidence with modern techniques. Defense lawyers and retired investigators alike agree a fresh approach is needed, one that prioritizes forensic analysis and unbiased witness review. This advice drives renewed efforts, especially as DNA technology improves.
Did any witness testimony or expert analysis ever directly contradict the official timeline of events?
Occasionally, yes. Some witnesses place the girls alive after 11 p.m., contradicting register records and other statements. Others recall seeing men in the shop earlier than official timelines suggest. Expert analysts point out that memory distortion is common, especially with traumatic events, and urge caution in accepting any single account as definitive.
How did media coverage play in shaping public perception and witness statements?
Media coverage is intense and often sensational. News crews film investigators at the scene, and local stations repeatedly air composite sketches and appeals for tips. Some witnesses admit their memories were influenced by news reports, highlighting the challenge of gathering uncontaminated testimony. The media amplifies the case's emotional impact, keeping community pressure high, but sometimes muddling factual clarity.
How did police ever revisit witness statements as new evidence or technology became available?
Absolutely. Every new forensic breakthrough triggers a review of old statements, with detectives looking for overlooked details. Advances in DNA analysis prompt re-examination of physical evidence, though the degraded samples remain a challenge. Investigators also re-interview key witnesses, hoping time has clarified or jogged forgotten memories.
What's the current status of witness involvement in the case? Are any still actively helping investigators?
Many witnesses have moved or fallen out of touch, but some families remain closely involved. A few neighbors and former employees attend annual vigils and periodically contact police with new thoughts. The community continues to hope for resolution, recognizing that witness testimony, even decades old, could still hold the key to justice. When investigators began developing suspects in the Yoghurt Shop murders, the sheer brutality and complexity of the crime meant they were facing a tangled web of possibilities. The killings occurred on December 6, 1991, at the I Can't Believe It's Yogurt Shop in Austin, Texas, and the victims, Amy Ayers, Eliza Thomas, Jennifer Harbison, and her sister Sarah, were all teenagers, found bound, gagged, and shot execution style.
That's horrifying. How did the police go about narrowing down their list of suspects, given how chaotic the crime scene was after the fire?
The initial approach was broad, Lead investigator John Jones contacted the FBI, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and the Texas Department of Public Safety right from the crime scene. Knowing that two different guns, a .22 and a .380, they immediately suspected at least two perpetrators, likely adults given the organized method and ability to control four victims at once.
Were there any early persons of interest or leads that seemed promising to investigators in those first few days?
Yes, police started by looking at everyone: family members, friends, shop regulars, and even drifters or people with criminal histories in the area. The suspicion fell on anyone who might have had opportunity or motive. But one of the first concrete leads was a man who had been seen hustling customers and was allowed to use the bathroom just before closing. He took unusually long and may have jammed the back door open.
Did any witnesses see anything unusual or anyone acting suspiciously in or around the shop that night?
Absolutely. A couple left the shop just before closing, around 11 p.m. They told police about two men sitting at a table, acting furtively. These men became central in early suspect sketches. Investigators canvassed the area, questioning nearby businesses and residents for descriptions, but the details were vague and sometimes conflicting.
What about the forensic evidence? Did the fire destroy most of it, or were investigators able to recover anything useful for identifying suspects?
The arson was devastating. Smoke and soot covered surfaces, making fingerprinting nearly impossible. Still, investigators managed to recover shell casings, bullets, and a small sample of male DNA from one of the victims, believed to be the result of a sexual assault. This DNA would become crucial in later years as technology advanced.
With DNA in hand, did police have any immediate matches, or was it just a waiting game as technology caught up?
At the time, DNA testing was in its infancy. The profile didn't match anyone in existing databases, so it became a long-term hope. Decades later, advances in DNA technology have renewed optimism, but back then, it led nowhere fast. Investigators kept the sample preserved, knowing it could one day be the key.
Did investigators consider the possibility that the killers were teenagers or people known to the victims, given how the girls were targeted?
Interesting point. Initially, some theorized the killers could be peers, given the victims' ages. But the organized method, the ability to control four people, and the destruction of evidence by arson suggested adults with criminal experience. Detective Jones stated, "It looked like the work of someone who had done this before, not just kids."
What about motive? Did the police find any evidence that might explain why these girls were targeted so viciously?
Motive has always been elusive. Robbery was considered because the cash register was emptied, but the level of violence and sexual assault pointed to something deeper, possibly sexual sadism, a thrill kill, or unresolved personal vendetta. Nothing in the girls' lives suggested enemies or risky behavior.
Did police ever find the guns used in the murders, or did the killers manage to get rid of them completely?
The weapons, a .22 and a .380, were never recovered. Investigators sent out nationwide alerts for similar guns, checked pawn shops, and followed up on every lead involving gun sales or thefts, but nothing matched the ballistics from the crime scene.
Were there any suspects arrested in connection with the case? And if so, what led police to them?
Yes, over the years, police arrested several men, including Forrest Wellborn, Maurice Pierce, Reichel Scott, and Robert Springsteen. These men were all teenagers in 1991 and linked by their social circle and proximity to the shop. What led police to them was a combination of circumstantial connections and confessions, though the reliability of those confessions was later hotly debated.
Can you walk me through how those confessions were obtained and why they became controversial?
Certainly. The confessions came after hours of interrogation, some described as aggressive and psychologically manipulative. Critics argued the confessions were coerced, pointing to inconsistencies and lack of supporting physical evidence. For example, Michael Scott's confession included details not matching the crime scene, and Robert Springsteen's confession was similarly problematic.
That's deeply unsettling. So, while the confessions were dramatic, they might not have been reliable. What about forensic evidence? Did anything tie these men to the yogurt shop?
Here's where things take a dramatic turn. In 2008, forensic scientists re-examined DNA collected from the victims. Using newly advanced YSTR testing, they isolated a male DNA profile from one of the girls. The result, the DNA did not match any of the four men charged, including Springsteen and Scott. This revelation cast serious doubt over the entire case.
That's incredible. So the DNA excluded all the suspects, even those who confessed. Did this lead to their release, or did the prosecution try to explain away the mismatch?
The prosecution argued the DNA could belong to an unknown accomplice, but the defense seized on the evidence. In 2009, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals overturned both convictions, Springsteen's and Scott's, ruling their trials were fundamentally flawed, especially because they couldn't cross-examine each other. Charges were dropped and both men were released. No one has been rearrested since.
That must have been devastating for the families. So close to closure, then everything falls apart. Were there any other suspects or major leads after that point?
Yes, but every new lead seemed to unravel. According to investigators, the men denied any involvement, and despite the physical resemblance, no forensic or circumstantial evidence could tie them to the Yoghurt Shop murders. Mexican authorities and U.S. investigators interrogated them thoroughly, but there was simply nothing solid to connect them to the Austin crime scene.
That must have been incredibly frustrating for the task force. What about the DNA? Did they ever get a match using newer databases or genealogy techniques?
That's another major development. In 2017, Austin police submitted the DNA profile to the FBI's expanded databases, using techniques similar to those that solved the Boston Strangler case. For a moment, there was excitement when a partial match surfaced, but advanced testing later ruled that sample out. The search for a DNA match continues to this day, with hopes pinned on even newer technologies.
So even with all the advances in forensic science, they still haven't been able to match the DNA? How much of the original evidence actually survived the fire?
The fire was devastating. Much evidence was destroyed or compromised by smoke, heat, and water. But crucially, some biological samples survived, including the male DNA found on one of the victims. Investigators also retrieved bullets, most notably a .22 caliber round from a sink and another bullet that suggested a second weapon, possibly a .380.
That's fascinating. Do we know if the ballistic evidence ever linked to any known weapons or suspects? Did they trace the guns?
Despite exhaustive searches, including tracing all registered .22 and .380 firearms in the area, investigators never conclusively linked any weapon to the crime. Maurice Pierce's .22 was tested, but it was not a match. The guns used in the murders remain missing, a haunting gap in the case files.
Were there any other key pieces of physical evidence or forensic breakthroughs that stood out as the investigation continued?
There were attempts to reconstruct the sequence of events using the victim's bindings and the burn patterns. Forensic analysts determined the fire was set with accelerants, possibly lighter fluid, spread over the girls and around the shop. The pattern suggested the killers tried to destroy evidence and possibly to mask the brutality of the crime.
Did any witnesses see or hear anything unusual that night? Anyone who might have seen the suspects enter or leave?
Yes, a critical witness couple reported leaving the shop around 11 p.m. Jennifer Harbison, one of the victims, locked the door behind them. They noticed two men sitting at a table with only a single drink, describing them as looking out of place. Their description helped produce a composite sketch, but the men were never identified.
That's such a striking detail. Were there any other eyewitness accounts or tips that investigators followed up on?
Over the years, investigators received hundreds of tips, some from people claiming to have overheard confessions, others from individuals reporting suspicious behavior. At least 50 people confessed to the murders at various points, but most were quickly ruled out. The sheer volume of leads was overwhelming, making it hard to separate fact from fiction.
50 confessions? That's almost unheard of. Do we know why so many people falsely confessed? Was it media attention or something else?
A combination of factors: intense media scrutiny, the notoriety of the case, and some individuals' psychological vulnerabilities. Some people seek attention, others are pressured or confused during questioning. Experts note that in high-profile cases, false confessions are shockingly common, complicating investigations.
That must have made it incredibly difficult for detectives to find the truth. What about the psychological profiles? Did the FBI or profilers offer any insights about the likely killers?
The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit provided a profile suggesting at least two perpetrators, likely young men familiar with the area. The level of violence, the sexual assaults, and the use of fire all indicated a need for control and possibly a desire to destroy evidence and dehumanize the victims. The crime was seen as both organized and opportunistic.
Did the profilers' insights help narrow down suspects, or did it just reinforce how unique and brutal this case was?
It offered some guidance, but the profile fit a broad demographic. Still, the idea of at least two perpetrators was supported by the logistics, multiple victims, the bindings, the movement required to control them, and the use of two weapons. Investigators always believed this was not the work of a lone individual.
Did the families of the victims ever interact with the suspects or have any reactions to the overturned convictions?
The families have spoken publicly about their anguish. Some felt relief at the initial arrests, believing they were finally getting answers. When the convictions were overturned, that hope turned to devastation and frustration. Many have continued to advocate for new testing and fresh investigations, desperate for closure.
I can't even imagine what they've gone through. With the case still open, are there any promising new leads or technologies on the horizon that could finally break it wide open?
The most promising avenue remains genetic genealogy, the same technique that cracked the Golden State Killer case. Investigators are working with what little DNA remains, hoping that expanding databases will eventually yield a familiar match. The case has also drawn renewed attention thanks to documentaries and public interest.
What about the original investigators? Are any still involved or have new detectives taken over? How has the passage of time affected the investigation?
Some of the original detectives, like John Jones, have retired but remain emotionally invested. Newer investigators bring fresh eyes and advanced forensic tools. But time is a double-edged sword. Memories fade, witnesses move or pass away, and evidence degrades. Still, the commitment to solving the case remains strong.
With all these years and so many twists, confessions, DNA exclusions, new suspects, what do you think is the biggest unanswered question that keeps investigators up at night?
The biggest question is, of course, who left that male DNA on the victim? It's the one piece of physical evidence that could, if matched, finally unmask the killer or killers. Until that happens, the case remains an open wound for Austin and the families.
It's haunting to think that the answer could be out there, just waiting for the right technology or the right person to come forward.
Are there any plans for further testing or any public appeals for information?
Investigators have made repeated public appeals, especially as new DNA technologies emerge. They encourage anyone with even the slightest suspicion or memory from that night to contact authorities. Every few years, as forensic science advances, the evidence is retested in hopes of a breakthrough.
Do you know if the shop location itself has ever been memorialized, or if the community marks the anniversary in any way?
The original location of I Can't Believe It's Yogurt is now gone, but every December, families and locals hold vigils, lighting candles and sharing memories. It's become a somber tradition, a way to honor the girls and remind the city that their story is not forgotten.
That's incredibly moving. As we head towards the final part of this story, what should listeners remember about these breakthroughs and the challenges that remain?
Listeners should remember that even in the face of major breakthroughs, confessions, arrests, DNA evidence, this case has proved how fragile justice can be. Every revelation brings hope, but also new questions. The perseverance of the victims' families and the investigators is a testament to the enduring search for truth, even after decades.
The current status of the Yoghurt Shop Murders case is as haunting as ever. After more than 30 decades, the brutal killing of Amy Ayers, Jennifer and Sarah Harbison, and Eliza Thomas remains officially unsolved. The 1991 crime scene, ravaged by fire and water from firefighters, left precious little physical evidence. Every year, investigators and surviving family members revisit the unanswered questions that continue to torment Austin.
It's staggering that after all these years, with so many advances in forensic science, we still don't have answers. What exactly is happening with the DNA now? Is there any hope that new technology might break the case wide open?
That's the glimmer of hope investigators are holding on to. A Y-star DNA sample, male-specific, was found on one of the victims, but for years it only had 16 genetic markers, insufficient for a solid match. In 2020, advanced testing added 9 more markers, totaling 25, but heartbreakingly, the sample still doesn't match anyone in the public DNA database. The FBI confirmed the current DNA profile is not an investigative lead, yet a small amount of the original DNA remains preserved, and tech advances may allow for further testing in the future.
That must have been incredibly frustrating for the task force. What about potential contamination or alternate suspects? Did investigators ever consider the possibility of someone completely unknown?
Absolutely, and that's a major part of the ongoing mystery. The fact that the DNA sample doesn't match any of the main suspects or anyone in the national database has fueled speculation that the real perpetrator or perpetrators may have never been on law enforcement's radar at all. Investigators have always believed at least 2 men were involved, based on the logistics of the crime: 4 victims, tied and gagged, shops set ablaze. Some theorize the DNA could belong to a drifter, transient, or someone who left Austin soon after the murders. There's also the possibility of evidence contamination, but the chain of custody and original collection methods have been scrutinized extensively.
That's so unsettling. Just thinking that the killer could still be out there, possibly never identified. Are there any other key suspects that have emerged over the years, or is the investigation focused solely on finding a DNA match?
Over the years, dozens of leads have been chased. Some tips pointed to known criminals in the region, others to people with vague connections to the victims. In the months after the murders, detectives interviewed hundreds of individuals, former employees, customers, and local troublemakers. One notable theory involved a career criminal who committed similar arson-related crimes, but his DNA didn't match either. The investigation's focus now is almost entirely on the unassigned DNA, but cold case detectives continue to review tips and new information as it comes in.
That's so unsettling, just thinking that the killer could still be out there, possibly never identified.
Are there any other key suspects that have emerged over the years, or is the investigation focused solely on finding a DNA match? Over the years, dozens of leads have been chased. Some tips pointed to known criminals in the